all about the cash. It's often said that cash is the lifeblood of an organisation. In order to achieve outcomes and deliver associated outputs, we need inputs and resources. Such resources need money. This workshop helps you consider cash flow in your organisation, offers tips and advice in managing money, and looks at this in the context of the challenging circumstances we now find ourselves in. In the slides that follow, we will 1. Look at understanding cash inflows and outflows in your organisation and introduce you to key terms you may hear in talks with your accountant. 2. Consider how to build and manage cash flow projections and look at issues regarding financial control. And 3. Look at scenario planning, highlight options available to plug any gaps, and lastly, offer a few final points to bear in mind over the next few weeks and months. Cash inflows. Income in social enterprises and third sector organisations may come from various sources. Typically, this can include grants and funding, local authority contracts and service level agreements, or trading and sales, either business to business or direct to consumers. The key questions to consider at this time are to look at the certainty and uncertainty of these income streams. Funding. Are there some projects now on hold that you'd already started? Are key services you deliver needing to continue? Are there some projects that were due to start now on hold? Have fundraising events been cancelled? Are there new funding sources coming on board as you need to expand or diversify your activity? What is your funder's perspective on money you have already received? One useful place to get a sense of this is through the SCVO COVID-19 website. Here it will tell you different funders' perspectives on their approaches to lifting restrictions on restricted money, enabling you to change activity, or looking at relaxing reporting restrictions. Public sector contracts. You may or may not still be able to deliver on these. Systems for releasing payments from the local authority may be delayed. Guidance has been given to the public sector regarding contract management at this time, and it may be useful to familiarise yourselves with these guidelines. New contracts may also be released, and again, guidance has been given in relation to public sector procurement at this time too. Trading and sales. Often those involved in trading are the ones that have seen the most sudden reduction or even complete loss of income. It may be that your route to market, i.e. customers, involve direct interaction, which you can no longer have. You may still have a route to market, but have been affected by supply chain, distribution channels, or staff shortages. The impact on trading may also vary depending on what you sell or who you sell to. Some customers, where able, are still keen to show financial support, even where goods and services may have changed. Some products or services may be seeing an increase in demand, meaning you have a different challenge to meet regarding operations or reputation management. Regardless of where income is generated from, you will need to consider timelines. Where your money comes from may be affected by your customer's financial situation and their own operational setup. Cash outflows. There are 4 key questions to consider here. 1. What costs have stayed the same? 2. What costs have changed, either increased or decreased? 3. What costs are no longer relevant? And 4. What new costs have been incurred? Often costs most likely to be the same, maybe the fixed costs, rent, staff, utility bills. Costs that have changed could include communications, costs associated with product inputs, a need for more professional advice. Costs that are irrelevant could be travel, venue hire, meeting costs, and you may have new costs associated with staff moving to home working, laptops, IT support, mobile phones. If your organisation has completely changed its activities and outputs, then new costings will also be needed. Finally, if some projects are on hold, so too may some of the associated costs. Finally, in looking at terminology, I thought it may be helpful to highlight some key terms you may come across when speaking with your accountant. Liquidity. How quickly can you meet debts as they fall due? Insolvency refers to a situation when you cannot pay off debts. And going concern. Here the business entity will continue and has the resources needed to continue operating. Cash flow planning is, in essence, having a timely and realistic picture of how much cash you have in the bank and managing your liquidity, your ability to meet debts, avoid insolvency, and continue as a going concern. Start with how much money you have in the bank. Add in the additional income you'll receive. Subtract the expenditure and calculate your new cash balance. While support and interventions have been announced at this time, it is critical to have a true understanding of your own situation. Whether you prepare cash flow on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis will depend on your own cash situation. The frequency may also be set by your bank, by funders, investors, trustees, or board of directors. Having considered your situation, you then need to consider what financial controls you need to put in place. A well-managed organisation may already have some of these systems. First of all, managing debtors and creditors. Debtors, those people who owe the organisation money. You may have invoiced them and they still need to pay. When may this be likely? How do you set, enforce and manage payment terms? Do you have any bad debtors on your system? Should you now look to write these debts off? Think accurately regarding when people will pay. How may their systems be working in the current circumstances? What might their cash flow really be like? Further points you may wish to consider in managing your debtors at this time could be, is it worth looking at offering incentives for prompt payment? Are you up to date with sending all your invoices out? Are there any orders you can fulfill that can easily be converted into cash? Creditors, those to whom you owe money. Do you have a system for prioritising and managing payments, or do you simply pay on receipt? Should you have a policy for prioritising payments? Key suppliers, SMEs, other social enterprises. Consider the payment terms you have. You may not need to pay these bills immediately. Can you look to negotiate payment terms if necessary? Assessing costs and expenses. Now may be the time to carefully consider what you spend money on and the value you get. What can you cut or reduce? What's not critical? What's nice to have? What can you negotiate? Rent? Staff hours? Prices? Credit terms? Are there any alternatives to products and services you already buy in that may be more cost effective? Finally, in looking at financial controls, you must have a robust financial process. If cash flow is tight, appoint a financial controller. Have one person responsible for placing any orders and managing any payments. If staff are used to placing orders autonomously, even up to set limits, this may be something you now need to halt. Finally, having considered cash flows and financial controls, you can then look at scenario planning. First of all, consider the immediacy. This will vary for different organisations in the third sector. For many who already have grant funding in place, it is more likely to depend on your grant funder's perspective and attitude than a sudden loss of trading income. Look at payment delays and timelines. Be prudent when planning cash flow circumstances. Understand that some businesses may be slower to move towards home working and system changes. In looking at scenario planning, You may wish to look at how you plan to move your organisation's activity forward. Do you plan to continue at current activity levels? Will you continue at a limited capacity? Are you putting the business on hold? Or do you plan to deliver completely new services and diversify? To fill the gaps, a number of options may be available. It's always better to ask for an overdraft facility before you need it. Have one in place. Should you be looking at your reserves policy? Now may be just the time then your reserves meet the emergency you now face. Are there staff you can put on hold using the staff retention scheme? Can you apply for any of the emergency funds, such as the Third Sector Resilience Fund? And if you're a trading organisation over the VAT threshold, is VAT deferral something you should consider? Finally, I wanted to leave you with a few key points. Be timely and realistic in your calculations. Assess frequently. Be prudent. This probably is the time for looking at worst case scenarios. And communicate across stakeholders, funders, investors, staff, and your board. We don't know how long this situation may continue. Many of the financial support schemes in place talk about 3 months, and this may be a sensible starting point. However, remember that as we come through this, you will also need to plan what is likely to be a tapered introduction, both operationally and financially, back to the situation you were in prior to COVID-19. I hope you found this webinar useful. Planning cash flow at a time of crisis can be challenging, and there are difficult decisions to make. But as we come out of this, it may also bring a greater level of financial control and understanding, helping you to build a stronger enterprise as you move forwards. Thank you.